Hi, my name is Alexandra Rose, and I work at the University of Colorado Museum of Natural History. I'm an ecologist, and that means that I'm interested in the diversity and abundance of species in our environment. In particular, I'm interested in the diversity and abundance of native pollinators, bees and wasps. And I got interested in that issue because there's a great mystery and also a sad story unfolding across North America. And that is that we're losing our native pollinators, our bees and wasps especially, at an alarming rate. And we actually know very little about what's happening to them. I'm working on this project called The Bee's Needs, which is attempting to understand, first of all, which species of bees and wasps do we have in Colorado, where are they, and why are some species found somewhere and not elsewhere? So we're interested not only in just sort of mapping the diversity and abundance of our native pollinators, but also in understanding what the landscape attributes are. What are the factors that people can control that might be leading to the presence or absence of these species on the landscape? And when I say landscape attribute, what I mean is things like pesticide use, herbicide use, lawn watering practices, development practices, how much open space we keep near our communities, how close we live to water, things like that that might help explain why we find some species somewhere and not elsewhere. And what we expect to find is that there will naturally be patterns of diversity and abundance, so we don't expect to find all of our bees and wasps all over the place. But we do expect that there are going to be some explanatory variables, some things that allow us to understand why we do find something somewhere and not elsewhere. And we hope that those are things that we can actually make changes in and control in our communities so that we can help keep our native pollinators around. So in order to do this, we're going to need to collect a lot of data. And what kind of data do you think we're going to need to collect? And how on earth can we collect as much data as we're going to need to do it? Well, come into the field with me and let's find out. So welcome to my field site, which happens to be my backyard. So in order to answer the questions that we're interested in, we have to figure out a way to sample the diversity and abundance of bees and wasps in our communities. And so to do that, we've designed this piece of wood hanging on the fence behind me here called a bee block. And basically a bee block is a house for bees. So it has 40 different tunnels of 8 different sizes for different sized bees and wasps. And the bees and wasps can use this to make their nests, to rear their offspring. When they're done laying their eggs in there, they make little plugs of vegetation or other materials to seal their babies off from the environment. And those nest plugs can give us a great clue into who's actually been using that hole to breed. So different species of bees and wasps use different kinds of materials. The bee block behind me is primarily filled up with plugs that are made of chewed vegetation, but bees and wasps can also use cut leaves, pieces of grass, pebbles, pine sap, all kinds of different things. And depending on what material they've used, you can understand which species of bee and wasp are breeding in there. So we have this really non-invasive way of sampling diversity in our environment. But the trick is that in order to understand how the bee diversity here in my backyard relates to bee diversity across the whole state of Colorado, we need a lot more data. And particularly if we're going to try to tease out some of the patterns I was telling you about before regarding how things like pesticide use and gardening practices lead to diversity and abundance. We need a lot of data from a very large scale geographically. And so in order to do that, we rely on the power of citizen science for this project. Citizen science is the field of using volunteers who may not necessarily be scientists to actually collect and in some cases analyze data for actual researchers. So for this project, we're asking people to put bee blocks just like this out in their backyard and then to check them every 2 weeks from basically the early spring through the late summer to see whether they see any signs of nesting. So do they see any nest plugs? And if they see nest plugs, they can either take a picture of them or they can go online and describe to us what they're seeing. And that gives us some indication of which bees are present in their yard and who's breeding there. And so by doing this with lots and lots of volunteers all across the state, we can get the amount of data that we need essentially for free. So we have a lot to learn. We're in the process of collecting lots and lots of data, and I really hope that you'll follow along with our progress and understand more about what we're finding as the year goes on.